News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Doug Krisner, and we begin in Iran, where nationwide anti-government protests have intensified. In recent days, President Trump has repeatedly threatened to strike Iran, suggesting America is back in the regime change business. We are told U.S. commanders have briefed Trump on options for military strikes, and today Tehran warned both the U.S. and Israel against any intervention. We heard from Kentucky Republican Senator Rand Paul. He expressed concerns while speaking on ABC's This Week.
Bombing's not the answer. Plus, there is this sticking point of the Constitution that we don't really let presidents bomb countries just when they feel like it. They're supposed to ask the people through the Congress for permission.
That is Kentucky Senator Rand Paul speaking earlier on ABC's This Week. There were nationwide protests against ICE across the U.S. after an agent shot and killed Renee Nicole Good last week in Minneapolis. Today, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said hundreds more federal agents are being deployed to Minneapolis, and Noem maintained her position that the ICE agent was acting in self-defense. Here is Noem speaking on CNN's State of the Union.
This was clearly a law enforcement action where the officer acted on his training and defended himself and his life and his fellow colleagues. It's a tragedy that this family has lost a loved one and that our country is dealing with the situation. But that's why we need our leaders to turn down their rhetoric. We need individuals and elected leaders in Minnesota to start partnering with us so that we can do law enforcement operations on the streets to protect the citizens that live there.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem speaking on CNN's State of the Union. Now, this fatal shooting has sparked debate over whether the officer was justified in using deadly force. Now, critics are pointing to video footage and witness accounts, and they say there was not an imminent threat, calling the shooting unjustified. Meantime, federal authorities are freezing Minnesota officials out of this investigation. And speaking today on NBC's Meet the Press, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey called for state agencies to be involved.
Let's have the investigation in the hands of someone that isn't biased. Let's not have it exclusively run through the FBI at the federal government or the Department of Justice. Let's have it with the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension at the state level. This is an entity that has expertise. They have a long history of investigating cases just like this.
Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey speaking earlier on NBC's Meet the Press. Late last week, the Trump administration met with oil executives to discuss rebuilding Venezuela's oil industry. And today, U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright told CBS Face the Nation there's a real possibility American businesses will take a financial stake in Venezuela's oil industry.
Today, we are running the sale of their crudes. You know, we have a quarantine around their ability to ship oil outside of Venezuela. All of that goes through American crude marketers, and then that crude goes out into the market. We collect those funds and bring them back to Venezuela to better the lives of Americans and Venezuelans. But in the long run, what will happen with Venezuelan oil resources? Yeah, of course, quite likely you'll see American companies expanded presence there. You'll see growing production. U.S.
Energy Secretary Chris Wright speaking on CBS Face the Nation. At the same time today, in a post on Truth Social, President Trump said Cuba will no longer get oil or money from Venezuela. Trump also said he is planning to meet with Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado later in the week. The Supreme Court is expected to hand down more opinions this week, and that includes a possible ruling on challenges to President Trump's tariffs. Mary Lovely is senior fellow at the Peterson Institute for International Economics. She told us markets are in suspense.
Uncertainty is a killer. We've seen investment in the United States, maintain a good pace, but half of it is in data centers. What we really need is investment in activities that create jobs. So there is this tension here about continued uncertainty and the long-term health of the economy.
Mary Lovely from the Peterson Institute for International Economics speaking earlier to Bloomberg. And that is News When You Want It with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Doug Krisner, and this is Bloomberg.